Dave's statement that he feels as though he is still not here was unsettling. However, he was still clinging to a lot of things and a lot of boys. He had never been able to move on from the past. Years. It all began in 1983 when guitarist Dave Mustaine was fired by Metallica. More than just Metallica was altered by the impact. Their rivalry became one of the most talked about in music history after Megadeth was formed. Metal fans argued over James Hetfield and Dave Mustaine's fights, which were widely reported in the media for years. Hetfield has finally made the decision to discuss this shared past in an open manner after many years. But what does he actually think about the early years of Metallica, Mustaine, and Megadeth? Let's investigate. When Metallica first appeared in the early 1980s, they combined harsh riffs and quick tempos to create a brand new sound that would later be known as thrash metal. The band was formed by James Hetfield on guitar and Lars Ulrich on drums. However, their early music didn't gain a rough edge until Dave Mustaine joined on lead guitar. The early sound of Metallica was influenced by Mustaine's aggressive, accurate, and attitude-driven playing. Songs like The Four Horsemen and Jump in the Fire from their debut album, Kill 'Em All, were written in large part by Mustaine. Despite his talent, Mustaine's time in the band wasn't without its setbacks. Mustaine's actions caused issues because he drank excessively, got into arguments with other band members, and got into fights. As Hetfield subsequently stated, "We were all young and careless, but Dave took it to a whole new level." The band struggled with Mustaine's capricious behavior. Cooperation was no longer an option. It was a difficult decision for Metallica to fire Mustaine in 1983, right before they were recording their debut album. He replaced him with guitarist Kirk Hammett, which led to lifelong issues. Mustaine was devastated to be let go from Metallica. In subsequent interviews, he described it as a betrayal that inspired him to form a band even more successful and prestigious than Metallica. Shortly thereafter, Mustaine founded Megadeth in order to quarrel with his former bandmates. One of the major conflicts in heavy metal started as a result of this decision. Metallica became two dominant bands that supported one another both musically and commercially as a result of their growing popularity and widespread success. Megadeth, however, was motivated by Mustaine's ambition to establish himself. Megadeth gained a lot of popularity, but how did Metallica's rivalry with Mustaine affect James Hetfield's leadership and the band's future? The rivalry between Metallica and Megadeth became extremely personal for Dave Mustaine after Megadeth fired him in 1983. From the beginning, he demonstrated his worth to Metallica by using his new band, Megadeth. Mustaine has frequently stated, "Every note I wrote and every song I recorded for Megadeth in the early years, I was trying to show them what they lost." Conversely, Metallica quickly moved on and released Kill 'Em All, which featured Kirk Hammett on lead guitar. The record's popularity made matters worse. It was more than simply replacing Mustaine when he was fired. It had to do with the fact that Metallica's songs still featured a lot of his work. Songs like Jump in the Fire and The Four Horsemen were reworked versions of songs that Mustaine had composed prior to his departure from the band. He was frequently upset that he wasn't receiving the recognition he believed he was due. Everyone was aware of the feud by the mid-1980s. Megadeth's debut album, Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good, was released in 1985. Many people perceived its fast-paced, aggressive songs as insults to Metallica. Mechanics resembled Metallica's The Four Horsemen, for instance, but it was performed at a much faster tempo. Mustaine used this to assert his ownership of his work. At the same time, Metallica reached new heights with their albums Master of Puppets, 1986, and Ride the Lightning, 1984, which sold more records than Megadeth and established them as the leaders of thrash metal. James Hetfield's leadership was crucial to maintaining Metallica's stability as the band's popularity grew, but Mustaine's issues persisted. "The Dave problem was always there in the background," Hetfield said in an interview with Classic Rock magazine in 2009. Years had gone by, but that silent struggle remained. The rivalry was exacerbated by the offensive remarks that were reported in the media. Mustaine frequently claimed that Metallica's success was unjust since they had abandoned their thrash roots in order to appeal to a wider audience of music lovers. When the Black Album was released in 1991, some fans experienced this. Hetfield, however, was more concerned with Metallica's future and seldom directly responded to Mustaine's opinions. However, he claimed in a rare interview that while his rage allowed for a lot of amazing music, it also made it difficult for us to get along. We would never be in agreement. Megadeth and Metallica's feud was more than just a dispute between two bands. It became a significant aspect of their public image. Supporters were frequently divided. While some appreciated Megadeth's technical intensity and unwavering resolve, others preferred Metallica's polished and approachable sound. The rivalry evolved into one of metal's most captivating storylines, altering both bands' musical styles and fan interactions. James Hetfield talked more about his conflict with Dave Mustaine and how it impacted Metallica and Megadeth over time. Hetfield was unable to completely escape the issues he had with Mustaine, despite his attention being on his own band's success. While filming their documentary Some Kind of Monster in 2004, Hetfield and Mustaine had a rare and poignant in-person conversation. Mustaine discussed the agony of being fired from Metallica in the documentary. Hetfield was informed, "You never even thanked me. You seem to have thrown me away." Hetfield claimed that although firing Mustaine was the best course of action for the band's future, it was emotionally taxing for him. Years later, Hetfield remarked of that encounter, "It hit me how much hurt there was still. I had no idea how much it hurt him because at the time we were just trying to stay together as a band." Hetfield has acknowledged Mustaine's contributions to the early sound of Metallica, despite his ongoing anger. Hetfield stated a few weeks ago that Dave was a big part of how we started. His strength and his rage. Initially, those things shaped our identity as a band. Hetfield's admission demonstrated his maturity, as he had previously been hesitant to discuss Mustaine's role in Metallica's past. Hetfield has, however, also acknowledged the difficulties of working with Mustaine. In numerous interviews, he claimed that Metallica's early years were chaotic, with constantly shifting personalities and unending arguments. Hetfield claimed that their arguments were exacerbated by their shared egos and reckless adolescent conduct. He continued, "We were all out of control, and when you put that much fire in one room, something's going to blow." In recent years, Hetfield has focused more on the shared history of Metallica and Megadeth than on the competition. Hetfield has discussed how their tense relationship is both creatively powerful and destructive. Last year, he stated in an interview that, "Dave pushed us in ways we didn't know at the time. He was so keen to prove himself that we exerted more effort." Although Hetfield and Mustaine have never fully reconciled, their arguments have become less intense in recent years. Hetfield has not made an official statement, but Mustaine has stated publicly that he wants to collaborate with him once more. Hetfield was asked if he and Mustaine could collaborate once more in an interview conducted in 2023. Hetfield's statement was straightforward, "I respect him and what he's done. We are currently there." Hetfield's reflections reveal a more composed perspective on a competition that has been characterized by rage and more frequent altercations. He is aware that it led to strife and hurt people, but he also understands that it increased Metallica's and Megadeth's inventiveness. Despite James Hetfield's admiration for the past, how does this competition still impact the music and history of both bands today? The long-running conflict between Metallica and Megadeth is frequently cited as one of the most significant events in heavy metal history. Although the rivalry between the two bands caused tension in their personal relationships, it also encouraged both to perform to the best of their abilities, which benefited the genre as a whole. The feud served as a catalyst for Metallica's rise to fame. The band rose to prominence as the most significant heavy metal band in the world with the release of Master of Puppets in 1986 and Black Album, Their Own Name, in 1991. Their sound evolved from gritty thrash to mellow, intelligible metal, which contributed to metal's global fame. In a 2018 interview, Hetfield discussed the impact of the battle, saying, "Knowing Dave was out there trying to one-up us kept the fire alive. Fans and haters weren't the only ones involved. We wanted to prove ourselves something." Megadeth assimilated the feud into their identity. Dave Mustaine frequently stated that he wanted to surpass Metallica. He created songs like Rust in Peace and Peace Sells, but who's buying because of this? Although the band never achieved the same level of popularity as Metallica, these albums demonstrated a more intricate and technical style of thrash metal that received positive reviews from critics. He stated to reporters, "Every Megadeth song in the early years had something to prove to Metallica. Without them, Megadeth would not have been the same." Additionally, fans played a significant role in strengthening the competition. In the 1980s and 1990s, metal bands frequently divided into factions. Some chose Megadeth due to their skill with their instruments, while others chose Metallica due to their catchy music. But over time, that division has become less obvious. Nowadays, a lot of fans honor the contributions both bands made to the genre and refrain from contrasting them with other bands in the same genre. It's intriguing that Hetfield and Mustaine have differing views on the way the fight has been reported by the media. They produced some of their best music as a result of their feud, but it also detracted from their music. In a podcast last year, Hetfield stated, "In the end, it's about the music, not the arguments. No argument we've ever had can compare to what the two bands and I created." The rivalry between Metallica and Megadeth changed heavy metal forever. It raised the bar for what thrash metal could be and inspired fresh concepts. Both bands challenged the genre in ways that still have an impact on musicians today, despite having distinct styles and personalities. Perhaps sparked by resentment, egos, and wounded sentiments, the rivalry between Metallica and Megadeth evolved into one of the most significant tales in heavy metal history. These two bands created some of the most well-known songs in their genre by pushing one another to the limit of their creativity over decades of stress and rivalry. Upon contemplating this rivalry, James Hetfield has had to acknowledge its difficulty. On the one hand, it created tension that strained relationships and resulted in long-lasting resentment. However, it also forced Megadeth and Metallica to perform to the best of their abilities, which raised the standard for what heavy metal was capable of. Despite their lack of familiarity, Hetfield's more recent reflections demonstrate how much he appreciates Dave Mustaine's influence. The distinction between respect and competition has blurred over time. In the rock world, Eddie Van Halen's passing marked a profound turning point. Hetfield has stated in interviews that time frequently makes things clearer. Hetfield has stated that their shared journey resulted in something greater, a legacy of music that continues to inspire people today. The media frequently emphasized the animosity between Metallica and Megadeth. Metal bands Megadeth and Metallica are similar to each other. Despite coming from the same place, these bands left a lasting impression on music history. Previously, fans couldn't agree on which band they preferred, but today, Metallica and Megadeth are both commended for their contributions to heavy metal. They initially competed because they didn't get along, but eventually their story evolved into one of fortitude, ingenuity, and reciprocal influence. Ultimately, the tale of Metallica and Megadeth demonstrates that work-related stress can have both positive and negative effects. Both Dave Mustaine and James Hetfield have experienced both good and bad times in the past. Just evidence that even the worst circumstances can have positive outcomes.